Okay, here we are back for round six. And since I took Crabtree, the next picks were Andrew Luck, Percy Harvin, T.Y. Hilton, Ray Rice, Jeremy Macklin, Rashad Jennings, Torrey Smith, Trent Richardson, Chris Johnson, Sammy Watkins, Michael Floyd, Robert Griffin III, Tom Brady, and Danny Woodhead. Four picks coming up before I select another player. There's one auto picker, and Toby Gerhart still available. Probably going to go to this guy on auto draft right to his flex spot. I do want to take a moment here and talk about the tight ends. I've been kind of ignoring them to some extent, and this is the point in the draft where, based upon the roster that I've constructed, I could get more value out of taking a tight end than a backup, wide receiver or running back in this spot. And with that in mind, let's look at who's available. We got Jason Witten, Greg Olsen, Dennis Pitta, Kyle Rudolph, Jordan Reed, Charles Clay, Martellus Bennett, kind of as the top of the ranks here on ESPN. I do like Witten. I like Olsen a lot more at his, ESPN ranking. And I think that Pitta, Reed, and Bennett, and then a little further down here, Zach Ertz and Ladarius Green are also very good values. After the Woodhead pick, P.S. Marquez Colston, Joique Bell, Bishop Sankey, and Toby Gerhart to the auto drafter were all selected. And there you go. That's where we're at. And now we're looking at, do I go for a tight end? And would it be Witten? Let's look at our rankings. Our rankings have Witten behind Kyle Rudolph, Vernon Davis, Jordan Reed, and Greg Olsen. So I think the thought process behind Greg Olsen, this is why I ranked him so high, fifth overall the position, is that, Cam Newton's receiving options aren't as good as they used to be. And, he does have a bit of a rapport with Olsen, and that could be a very lucrative fantasy situation. Kind of like Rob Gronkowski with Tom Brady. Maybe, not on that level, obviously, but just in the number of targets that Olsen's going to see. Anyway, back to this pick. I'm not going to take Witten because I would rather just have one of those other guys later. Guys on my radar here are Cordarrelle Patterson. Kaepernick is in the conversation at this point, although I'm probably going to continue to wait at QB. And you know what? I might just, snatch up Patterson as I'm thinking about it. Because he's going on my bench here, I like the pick a lot more than if I was drafting him to my starting roster. I do think there's a lot of risk kind of inherently involved with Cordarrelle Patterson. He's very talented. He has, a lot of upside, but with that upside also comes a pretty low basement. And on my bench, I love a player like that. I love upside. For my, the core of my team, the guys I want to rely on almost every week, I'm a little more skeptical about trusting those guys. Again, it is worth noting here that the running backs have really kind of dried up. Steven Jackson is the top ranked one available. After him are the two New England holdovers from last year, Vereen and Ridley, then Pierre Thomas, MJD, Chris Ivory, Fred Jackson. This is the level of player we're talking about. And so as you can see, it's not that surprising that, a lot of flex spots this year are going to have wide receivers instead of running backs, because here we are in a round when, a lot of teams would be selecting players for their flexes, and the wide receivers are, just as reasonable a picks as the running backs. So coming back to me here, I am tempted to look again at tight end and quarterback, but I'm probably going to continue to wait. Emmanuel Sanders, Jason Witten, and Kaepernick were just selected. If Kaepernick were available there, I would have considered it. But with that said, I really don't mind being the quarterback by committee type of player, especially when you can get, a guy like Jay Cutler much, much later, and pair him up with maybe someone else who's also going to be reasonable, someone in the Carson Palmer, Ryan Tannehill vein of, talent. With that said, there would be nothing wrong with taking Matt Ryan or Tony Romo here, or Phil Rivers. Matt Ryan is particularly appealing. I do think that offense is going to be playing from behind a lot. The Atlanta defense does not seem super solid. Here are the QBs in our rankings, and Matt Ryan, firmly ahead of some of those other guys, Romo, Cutler, Brady, and even Kaepernick. I have Ryan ranked higher for standard leagues. And with that said, he might be the pick here. We'll look at tight ends one more time. I do like the idea of Olsen, but I also like the idea of just waiting. There's a good chance that a tight end I like will still be there in the next round. More than a quarterback I like, that's, not as obvious. I have a feeling that most of these auto drafters have quarterbacks at this point. So, and I think this auto draft software does tend to fill your, I don't know if it fills your bench. I think it fills your active roster before it starts taking players for your bench. And that's something to consider if you are in a league like this. So, Matt Ryan, or let's see, I could take a running back, I suppose. I could take Vereen or Ridley. Lamar Miller is also interesting. But, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna buy in on a quarterback. This is kind of just an experiment. We'll see how much my running back core suffers for it come the next round. But I think I'm gonna be okay. If anything, I think I would regret not taking Olsen there as opposed to Ryan. There's a good chance that tight ends are gonna start get snatched up by these auto drafters because those are the spots that are available on their lineups. With that said, let's take a look at what the active drafters are looking at. So this guy has everything but his flex filled. The guy at the turn has everything but his quarterback spot filled, and I'm ignoring defenses and kickers at this point. Let's see. This guy needs a tight end. What does this fella need? He needs a quarterback and a tight end. This is a pretty standard looking team right here. All running backs and wide receivers to start the draft. And this is a very, simple but effective strategy because tight end and quarterback are pretty deep. You only need one of them. You could start a tight end in your flex, I suppose, but, the talent pool of that position is just a little bit shallower than that of wide receiver and running back, particularly a wide receiver. Who else do we got here? This guy has basically everything filled. He's looking at bench and then the two non-premium positions, and this drafter is doing the same. So since I took Matt Ryan, Steven Jackson, Reggie Wayne, Julian Edelman, Darren Sproles, Shane Vereen, Terrence Williams, and Stephen Ridley were all taken. That makes me feel pretty good about my plan so far. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to work, but let's pause, and I'll come back very shortly. I mean, it'll be instantaneous for you. It'll be very shortly for me, and we'll pick up some more draft picks and continue with the thought process for round 8. Okay, we're back, and I think from where I left off, the next picks after Stephen Ridley were Mike Wallace, Jay Cutler, Kendall Wright, the Seahawks defense, Pierre Thomas, Carlos Hyde, big time sleeper potential there. Probably could have waited on him. Maurice Jones-Drew, Phil Rivers, Eric Decker. There are 2 picks left before I come up here. Again, one of them is auto drafting. And what does the auto drafter need? It appears that they do not necessarily take open roster spots versus bench players because he got Steven Jackson auto drafted to his team. And with that in mind, that means that Greg Olsen will probably make it back to me here, and he might be my pick. Other options to consider include another wide receiver, although with 2 on my bench already, or excuse me, just only 1 on my bench. That's right. I took Ryan. This could be a good route to go. DeAndre Hopkins, Cecil Shorts. I actually like Cecil Shorts with Chad Henne as the supposed starter. He does tend to get hurt a fair amount, so I don't know if I want to invest this high of a draft pick in him. Justin Hunter is a guy who's getting a lot of praise this preseason, and going down the line, there's some more sleepers here. We can talk about them maybe with later in the draft because I'm not going to take anybody ranked that low just yet. There go Cecil Shorts and Chris Ivory back to back, and so we're looking at perhaps a running back or a wide receiver, maybe a tight end. Let's see what my opponents on the wraparound are doing here. One of them has Jason Witten and one of them has an open tight end spot. I am willing to gamble on trying to get Olsen back because, the downside is that I just take a different tight end. And I like Olsen, but I like I said, I like some of the other guys too. I think we're in range for Lamar Miller. He seems like a pretty good value here. I don't really think that Noshawn Moreno is going to be a big, thorn in his side necessarily in that Miami offense. But I do like Miller more than some of these other options: Fred Jackson, D'Angelo Williams, Bernard Pierce. We are kind of in the time of the draft where you're looking at timeshares between running backs. I mean, none of these guys has the job to himself except for maybe D'Angelo Williams. And, he's the type of runner who you might just rather have, in a platoon just so he can stay healthy the whole friggin' year. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to take Miller here. I think the upside is pretty good. Again, for the bench and for, team construction in general, I like to lean on upside with my bench spots and hope that some of these lottery tickets turn into winners. Whereas like early on, you want to take known quantities, just highest possible basement that you can think of. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. I'm not super sure what I want to do with my next pick. I might just make it Greg Olsen because, that's definitely the tight end I like most of this group. And it'll feel good getting him here relative to where, Jordan Cameron and Vernon Davis and those kind of second and third tier tight ends go. And I would argue that Greg Olsen is one of those second tier tight ends, along with Jordan Cameron, Jordan Reed, and Vernon Davis. And you can see that reflected in our ranks. And, I'm not the only one that feels that way, clearly. So that's what I'll plan on here. With that in mind, let's look at, just the flex in general, what kind of other players are available in the ESPN rankings. And yeah, a lot of question marks. DeAndre Hopkins, a guy who is a very, talented guy, but who knows what that offense is going to look like this year with a new quarterback. It is back to me. The 4 picks made were Anquan Bolden, Bernard Pierce, Darren McFadden, and Dennis Pitta. So that's interesting. He likes Pitta more than Olsen. I do not mind that at all because it means I get to draft the guy that I like. And yeah, we're going to add him to the team. There is something to be said about, rounding out your actual roster before you just totally fill up your bench. And like I said, I think Olsen's a good value here relative to some of the other picks that are being made. And I don't feel like I'm missing out too much at the running back or wide receiver spot here. If I were to take somebody else, I'd probably, throw a flyer at DeAndre Hopkins. Although to be honest, Dwayne Bowe being available here does seem pretty good as well. With that said, the Kansas City offense that's a running team, or that's not even a running team. That's just a Jamal Charles team. So who knows what to expect from that guy. Greg Olsen, welcome to the team. I'll be back shortly with the next round.